You've landed at Spark Launch, the guide star for embracing what it means to be neurodiverse. I'm Mike Cornell, joined by CEO of Spark Launch, Chaya. Here, we navigate mental health triumphs and tribulations from all across the spectrum, charting a course through the shared experiences that unite us, and discovering how to embody the unique strengths within neurodivergent and neurotypical alike, igniting your spark and launching it into a better tomorrow. Hello there. I'm Mike.
I'm Chaya.
And we want to welcome onto the show Shane Currin, a person dedicated to empowering young people, particularly the neurodivergent. And with over a decade of experience, Shane is a passionate mental health advocate, published writer, and host of Diamonds in the Rough, the Neurodivergent podcast. He uses his skills to raise awareness, break stigma, and support individuals and families in navigating mental health challenges. Shane's mission is to create a more inclusive and respectful world where neurodivergent individuals can thrive. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Thank you, Shane, so much for coming on the show. And I truly believe that the universe connects us all. And whatever energy connected us, I'm extremely grateful for that.
Oh yeah, I was saying to a friend not too long ago that we find each other. It's kind of a cosmic, universal energy, and you tend to meet the right people at the right times. Yeah, it's an honor. I think you found me through one of my articles, I think, and yeah, it's just you never know what one connection is going to do. So I'm super stoked to be here.
And that brings about a great point. Right. If you hadn't written that article, if you hadn't put yourself out there, I wouldn't have found you. So kudos to you for being brave and embracing your authenticity and putting yourself out there. So you talk about mental health, and Mike and I both are super passionate about it. Why don't you share your journey and what made you get here?
I remember when we met, it got a little emotional, so I'm going to do my best to not, because I've told my story a bunch of times, and it was actually the first time in a long time I actually got emotional telling it. So I'm from right outside Boston, where the marathon starts, Hopkinton, Massachusetts. I think the first real sign for me, like looking back, was there was an event. My dad had kind of planted this new tree in the front of our yard. It was like this, I think, Japanese maple tree. And me and my first best friend ever, we were just being kids and jumping over it for whatever reason, right? There was a rock in front of it, I guess, and we were just being kids. And I can't remember which one of us, but one of us like kind of biffed it a little bit and broke one of the, like a big branch on it. And I like absolutely lost it. And his mom, my mom, and my grandmother were all at the house at the time. And I was holding for a 7-year-old, I was holding probably the biggest rock I could over my head. And so I was like, that was SI for the age of 10. So looking back, like there's things that stand out. I can remember now that like a playoff Little League game where, unfortunately we lost. It was a really, both teams played really hard. It was a really close game. And, everybody was really bummed, but I like ran off into the woods and just had like this huge breakdown, huge dysregulation over it. So there's like these things that kind of stand out. Kind of growing up as a kid in the East Coast, it wasn't like age appropriate emotions at the time. I guess from like a neurotypical standpoint, right? Like it wasn't even hormones yet. Like I wasn't even a teenager, and I was having these very like severe, intense emotions, and going through grade school and middle school and high school, just feeling really like disconnected. And the crazy thing that you mentioned about writing was this is really around the time, middle school into high school is where the internet and AOL, if people remember that, was popular. And I had a really hard time connecting with peers, but when I would message people on AOL Instant Messenger, just like, I guess today's Facebook chat or DMs, like I could actually hold conversations a lot better, and I could get like a lot deeper with people. And because I was just very socially anxious going to school, I used to throw up in my shower before going to school because the social anxiety was just like, wasn't about like whether or not I did my homework or a test or an essay that was due. It was always like this gauntlet of social experience, school and managing all these relationships and kind of feeling like I don't know, I didn't have like a playbook or a manual that it seemed like a lot of my peers and a lot of my close friends just understood how to be social. And it wasn't really until sophomore year I took a class in sociology and I really hyperfixated on it. Like I absolutely loved it. I started understanding people a lot better. And then, I took AP Psych as well. And in that time, I had actually started using substances just at the time, just, it's what the cool kids did. And I just wanted to fit in. And I didn't really see it as an issue because it was very accepted, at least in my peer group. And so I didn't know the dangers of a neurodivergent, especially me who's bipolar, undiagnosed at the time, of what effect that was going to have. Now, also adding in being a pretty active guy, I rode dirt bikes, I snowboarded, I played rugby, so I actually had quite a bit of TBIs, probably even before the age of 18. I took quite a bit of serious like hospital CAT scan level concussions, which I know there's research now about that really affecting our brain chemistry and, a direct correlation to some neurodiversity, bipolar included. And so like I had great friends. I had a great family. I had, teachers that cared, coaches that cared. I went to summer camp. Like I had that, what people would call like a really good childhood. But for me, it was not like that's not how I experienced it. I did have a blast with all those people and doing all the cool things, but at the same time, I felt like really disconnected, really lost, very much in my head a lot of the time. And kind of after I graduated and I went to my first 4 year, I mean, I didn't even last the semester. I was asked to leave because, the drug had gotten worse. I was affecting the community at large. I had a night where I ended up in the hospital. I had drinking a lot of alcohol and also done psilocybin mushrooms on top of that. So that's probably how that pans out. And kind of like the story of the next 5 years is really just a lot of failed attempts at independence, a lot of major episodes, and 2 years later, getting a bipolar diagnosis, not knowing what that was, not knowing why it was so important to have a very kind of balanced lifestyle with a disciplined medicine regimen, disciplined eating regimen, why substances weren't really a good idea for a brain like mine. And it was, failed relationships, failed situations. I kind of moved all over New England and even into the tri-state area, trying to find my path. And, everything just wouldn't work out. I tried to join the military and I was, disqualified from that because of my diagnosis. Even though I scored pretty high on the ASVAB, I scored like an 88 and a 99, which is like really high. And but they were like, yeah, dude, like we're gonna need at least a year off of psychiatric medication for us to even consider. And it was every time I would just, experience these failures, trying to find my way in that like coming of age process, I would get deeper into my using, into kind of the party culture that surrounds college and that kind of age, like 18 to, really 23. And I ended up graduating community college at Quinn Sigmund out in Worcester. And I'd worked for my parents. They were both budding entrepreneurs and I worked a lot. Like my dad did construction. So I was in a trench when I was like 11, helping him, shovel or do whatever he needed me to do. And kind of paid me, but put money away for me at the time. And when I graduated, they're like, all right, like here's this money to kind of save for you. They were like, pay me half and save half kind of thing. And, within like a month and a half, I went through like roughly 10 grand and that was all drugs. And I had my first very, very vicious manic episode 2012. And that was kind of I had like seen therapists on and off since I left that first 4 year. That was the first time I was ever hospitalized. And that was a really, really like crushing experience. It's actually kind of my biggest fear still to this day, to like have to permanently be in one of those places. And, I just kind of played the game. I did what they wanted me to do. I got out in about like 45, 50 days. It's kind of hard to remember. And then that next year I went from a grandiose manic episode into one of the worst depressive episodes. And, I was just grasping at anything. And, at this time I'm 22, turning 23. A lot of my friends are graduating with their 4-year degrees. Some of them are getting engaged. Their lives are going really well. And I couldn't be, in my opinion, further off track, even though I just, graduated and had a degree and probably could have gone to, any mass state school. That's the kind of the with Quinn Sigmund, like they had that program where I could literally just walk into like any UMass or in any state school and finish my bachelor's. But I was just so crushed by all my experiences and I couldn't figure out, I really thought there was something like seriously wrong with me, that I was broken, that I was always going to be this way. And then I remember we went on a family vacation. It was right after the Boston Marathon bombing. It was right after both my mom's parents, so both of those, my grandparents, they died in the same month. And we went to Utah on a family vacation. And I remember I had so much anxiety on the mountains that I couldn't even snowboard. And I've been snowboarding my whole life. And I got back and I talked to my psychiatrist at the time and told her about the anxiety with very drug-seeking intent. I overdosed, woke up a couple days later in another in Marlboro Hospital. And what happened was I'd taken some right after I picked it up. I went to her office, to the pharmacy, to McDonald's, back. Once I got the prescription, I took 2 in the parking lot. I took 2 when I got home, and then I blacked out and I took the whole bottle without even knowing it. So that's kind of how I know I have an addiction problem, because even when I'm blacked out, like my brain wants to take more and more. And so I ended up in Marlboro and I was able, luckily enough, my folks and some of my really close friends came and visited me and they brought me some brochures. And I'd always wanted to move west. I was a big Western fan when I was a kid and I was able to come out here and do treatment. And I was about 2 months in. I was still doing all the same stuff. I was still using. I was finding even worse and harder drugs. I was dodging drug tests, all those things. And one day I hadn't talked to my parents. I was still pretty mad at them from putting me in the hospital multiple times, which like in hindsight, obviously it was life-saving. It was a very hard decision for them to do, kind of both times. But called my mom and she was kind of just singing my praises. And it was like the first time I'd ever kind of felt guilty about my using. And so immediately after I called like my best friend, he's actually the guy who married my wife and I. And I kind of told him like, very transparent, very real what I've been doing, that I've been doing like the really bad drugs, the heroin and Xanax and methamphetamines and stuff. And he held it was like the right thing from the right person at the right time. Like I was just willing and open enough to hear it. And he was just like, dude, I can't watch you destroy your life anymore. And we had our fun, but he grew out of it in a very like, we used to play together and stuff, but I was always the crazier one out of the two of us. And he was like, listen, dude, I can't watch you do this to yourself anymore. You're gonna die. And I don't want to hear from you unless you're sober. So call me back in 30 days, sober. Don't try calling anybody else for help, because if you don't figure this out, we're done. And I had a meeting with my therapist the day after, and he was the clinical director of my treatment center at the time. And I had something in my gut. It was just like one of those crossroads in my life where something told me that I should tell him. So I did. And he was like, well, we have to tell, the founder of the treatment center. I was like, no, I can't do that. Like he's gonna kick me out. And he was like, I promise you, he won't. And I was like, all right, I'll trust you. Like, but we called him and he's like, listen, I'm not happy, but I am proud of you because I think this is the first time you've ever been honest in your entire life. And you're gonna go to a meeting tonight and you don't have a say in it. And I was like, okay, I just don't want to get kicked out. And that was July 15th, 2013. So I'll be picking up 12 years sober this year. And after that day, everything kind of clicked into place. I started to realize that I just needed to listen to people that were trying to help and let them help guide my compass a little bit. And then I ended up, moving out of treatment 2 months later because I was doing so well. I finally finished, so that was September 2013. By February, I was completely done. And then I've spent the last 10-ish years working in treatment, and obviously with a lot of bumps in the roads along the way. And now, I'm an executive and the director of admissions for Solagria, and we work with neurodivergent youth, failure to launch, ages like 18 to 26, 27. And it's just been, I don't know, it's kind of a miracle, if I'm being honest. I didn't think I was going to make it past 26. I wasn't planning on it. Not that I had I had one suicide attempt when I was 20, but I just didn't think, just the way my life was going, that I was really going to survive, to 30. I'm married now. My wife is incredible. She's also neurodivergent. She's also former, went through treatment. She'll have 9 years this May, and it was a crazy ride. And the biggest thing for me was understanding myself more, having people in my life that I like to call lighthouses, which can help me avoid the rocks. Because I have a great brain, but it's kind of like, as good as it is, it has the potential to be very detrimental in my ways of thinking. Sometimes like my hyperfixations or my overanalysis or my paranoia, or just being not only bipolar but ADHD, PTSD. Like, I have a lot of fun acronyms associated to me. And it's like if Superman was powered by kryptonite. That's the way I put it before. My greatest strengths can also be my greatest weaknesses. And for any neurodivergence that listen to this, I'd say the best thing you could do is really discover yourself, discover the things that calm you down, discover the people that will be there for you. Really dive into those things that feel like they pull you towards them. For me, one of mine is obviously writing, and you're gonna have your days. You're gonna be completely dysregulated and shut down, and it's okay to have those days, because working in the field for as long as I have, and seeing them from not, a sum of inadequacies or diagnoses or labels, and for who they truly are, seeing myself that way. It's something that I feel is really lost in our culture, our society. I'm working on a couple articles right now, one of which is Mismanaged Genius, where neurodivergence shares 77.8% of traits with geniuses. And so, and understanding that with certain disorders, there's actually like correlative, like, levels of intelligence, and it doesn't have to be measured by IQ. There's other kinds of intelligence. And so it's one of those things where I really like to celebrate the strengths and help, the individuals I work with navigate those things that make life hard, that make it a little dysfunctional at times, without this approach that is demeaning. I tell them all the time, I'm not different than you. I'm just older. I've had more practice, and that the great things about you are great and they shouldn't be ignored. And I struggle every day too. I might look like I have it all together, but I don't. I tell them, if the time space continuum be different, I would be in treatment with them at the same time. And so, like, I can't challenge anybody to want to improve their lives unless they trust me, kind of like a spotter at the gym, is the analogy I use sometimes. And it's been the most rewarding miracle. I feel so blessed, so lucky, because, I shouldn't have made it. There's plenty of times I was at death's doorstep, and somehow, some way, with the help of some really special people, I'm here today to talk to both of you. So.
First off,
Wow.
I want to thank you for being open and sharing your story with us. And also, beyond this podcast, just utilizing your story regularly to help others and inspire others and show how far we can go and still come back. And there was actually a lot of your story that resonated very strongly with me. And I want to take a step back a bit to growing up. And you mentioned still finding a lot of joy in having a support system, and there are still things you liked. but you felt disconnected. You felt like there was a void. And I definitely experienced a bit of that as well. I always say my childhood both ruled and sucked equally in ways I can't quite comprehend. I liked plenty of activities I was doing, but it's a bit like putting a nice hat on a leper or something like that. And I think for people in our position who kind of had that kind of childhood, there's a lot of also internalized shame, like we don't maybe haven't earned having issues with our childhood and how we felt like we should have been happier or we shouldn't be viewing our own feelings that way. But I wanted to ask you a bit more about that feeling of being lost as a kid and being a little bit disconnected from your surroundings and what you've come to maybe understand about why you felt that way and what are some even unhealthy ways you kind of cope with that as a child. Because I definitely had some of my own and also had regular meltdowns where I would run off and hit myself or self-harm in some way, things like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, like as far as the coping things went, my imagination, especially as a kid before, I was a adolescent, like I would spend so much time by myself. Fortunate enough, like I lived in a neighborhood, so we had a lot of like woodland area behind us. And I spent, I was an only child and still am. And I spent a lot of time with my imagination. And it wasn't so much like I had an imaginary friend, of more I would picture myself, in these scenes. I was really into history and the medieval times and stuff. So I'd picture myself. I'd take a stick and I would, be a wizard or an archer or, a soldier on the battlefield. And I had this like crazy ability to literally visualize like this whole new world, and it could be looked at as escapism, but for me, there's this place of solace, and then kind of like, writing came into that, but I spent a lot of time, some of it forced, some of it for regulation purposes, just with myself and my dog, really. When I spent hours, at a time, I'd just be gone and out of the house, just and it's something I've done to this day too, is my alone time is once again a double-edged sword. But if my social battery gets too low, because I present very well, I like to say I'm like a introvert with an extrovert defense mechanism, like where I can present like really, really well and be like a social butterfly. But I actually need that like solace and not isolation, but just time to myself, whether it's like stopping off somewhere with a nice view on my way home from work or something. Those are things that I really stuck to. Obviously, video games is a big thing, like exploring new worlds. I still game now as a almost 35-year-old, but a lot of it's more social now because, everybody's adults and, it's expensive to go out and do things. So we, Friday nights I, hop on with some friends and we even play silly games like, like an online version of Pictionary or trivia where it's not even like the newest, greatest, whatever that's came out. It's just a bunch of people that are adults that get together and just like hang out. And so I leaned heavily on a few things growing up, writing and journaling and mediums. Like I was very into the Harry Potter series. I was very into like action figures and stuff. And I would just like my imagination was really that big thing that comforted me in those times. And it still felt like no matter what I did, even when I would have those more momentarily like, I had a tough week or a tough day, or my parents were on my butt about my grades or whatever, because they're like, oh, you're so bright, like why? You know what I mean? It's like, well, if I don't have interest or passion in this subject, I'm not really going to apply myself, which was fun to find out later in life. But like, it's that disconnected feeling. And it was so much in my head that I've talked to high school friends, I still talk to a good amount of them, and they didn't see me the way I saw myself, which was really crazy to me. Like I saw myself as this like this outcast that didn't really belong. My high school was decently cliquey, but not like, back in, that trope from a lot of like coming of age movies. It wasn't like super, super cliquey, but there was like groups of people, and I kind of would just pop around from one because I just like to be friends who I was friends with. And I saw myself as this person standing on the outside. But when I talked to my my peers and my, people I graduated with, they describe it as I was like right in the middle of everything. And that was a really interesting perspective for me to see. My experience wasn't what others saw, where I felt so disconnected and not part of. That is not how others saw me. And that disconnection still can haunt me to this day of not feeling part of and almost being like, in the main cast, but feeling like, I'm a side character with one line. My brain still does that. Like the other day, me and my wife like talk about neurodiversity almost every night and just our experiences and how we're going through life. And I said a lot of times it's like when I'm good at analyzing outside of myself, but when I'm doing it internally, it's like I'm sitting in an auditorium and then my analysis of myself is a version of me on the stage, but then there's mirrors on both sides. And so there's all these like replicants of my analysis of my analysis of my analysis of myself. And I have a hard time knowing what's real. I have a hard time knowing like what is actually happening and is what is just this like perseveration of thought about a situation, about how I appeared or looked or sounded in a social event or a gathering, and I have a hard time discerning like what actually happened, and I have that hard ability for separating from myself and seeing it objectively. And I really lean on others for that because I get very much myself talking to myself about myself, which is I stole that line from Peaky Blinders, but I've always loved it because it really is like that. Like I feel like I have all these versions of me all talking about me at the same time. I think it was just as true back in the day when I was in more so high school, middle school. But that was a big thing is not understanding how others saw me and how and the discrepancy between how I saw myself.
Thank you so much for being vulnerable and giving us a very clear picture of what happens with someone who would use substance abuse or attempt suicide, because we very rarely get to see what happens in the inner world. We just hear about the outcome and we don't really know what's happened inside. So you sharing this information today is going to help so many parents, so many other individuals. So I'm extremely grateful for sharing your story.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I think it was during one of my down seasons, as I call them, when I'm in the swamp, because just being bipolar, I hit the low lows and the high highs. And then once I kind of got past, it was recent, like within the last year, I got past kind of the self-deprecation part of it. And I got into this weird state of introspection and I kind of just had this feeling or this realization or epiphany that I was designed this way to help others. And essentially I visit the dark often, so I know the way out, and I can show other people that way. And it was whatever by design that and I've been told that by others. I've been told that time and time again. Kind of after I got sober of people saying like, dude, I think you were just supposed to go through these things and be a voice. And that's at the end of the day, like, I watch the statistics, we're not winning, we're losing, that they're getting higher every year, anxiety, depression, suicide, overdose. And I know it's because people, like Mike mentioned, it's people go through those experiences when they're growing up and that I love that how did you say it was like the wizard hat on the
A
crap, I
fancy
can't.
hat, fancy hat on a leper.
Yeah, the fancy hat on leopard. Dude. Like I feel like so many of us go through that experience and we do whatever we can to try to just feel okay. And it's not that it's the crazy thing is I think it's not because people care. I think it's just because people don't know. Like, like teachers and coaches and those things like they just and it's so hard for us to explain it, like to explain that disconnected feeling, to explain and people are like, what are you talking about? And like feeling those things so viscerally and so like feeling my emotions the way I did. everything, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, it's just your hormones. It wasn't. I felt like that I still feel like that. I feel things so deeply and it's really great. And it's sometimes like a real thorn in the side of feeling things, so feeling other people so deeply. Like, you know what I mean? Almost like on a, I don't know, like an empath, right? Where when I know someone's going through pain, it's not that like I can put myself in their shoes. I literally can feel their pain because of my connection with them. And it's just crazy to me that we haven't really figured this out. I know we're making great strides. Like I learned something new about bipolar the other day, and I've been studying it since I got my diagnosis, really, that I can have mixed episodes. I was like, well, that explains a lot. So I can be both like hypomanic and depressive at the same time. That explains this situation and this, you know what I mean? And so I've heard the saying that mental health is somewhat like 20 years behind the rest of medical science, and we're playing catch up. And I just want to be there. I know there's people out there that are in my situation or worse and are just looking for someone, to resonate with them, to see them that they're in that place. And if I can just be a line in their story of like, I heard this guy talk one time and I started really investing in myself and discovering myself and things turn around. Like that's all I really care about is kind of being what I needed. That clinical director at treatment center, he told me one time, and this was kind of towards the end of my treatment, he's like, you became the person you needed the most in your life, and that's who you are to others. And I really try to live by that.
Thank you again. What I see a big difference between the younger Shane and the Shane today is that you are able to speak your truth, your honest experiences, versus the younger Shane kept it all inside for whatever reason, for the circumstances that you just described. What would you tell yourself if you were able to talk to the younger Shane? And also, what would you tell parents so that they would know what to do if they would have a child similar to you? Because nobody is alike.
Good question. Well, if I'm talking to my younger self and I'm about to have all the experiences that I did, I would basically say it's going to be the most painful thing you've ever experienced, but you're going to come out on the other side, and it's going to be the greatest blessing that you'll ever know. You will have everything you've ever wanted, and it's not material. Like that's the biggest thing. It's relationships, it's experiences, it's being of service to others. That this you're going to be forged in so much pain and misery, and you gotta hold on to that hope that things will get better, that it's not permanent. And if you can hang in there, if you can just withstand this onslaught you're about to experience, the things that are waiting for you on the other side, it'll make, I used to say if I help one person, it was all worth it. And every day I get to show up for those that I work with and just have those and not, they don't even have to be deep conversations, just checking in with them and what are they excited on, what are they working on, being passionate about what they're passionate about, kind of to segue that way into what I would tell parents is let, if you're lucky enough to figure out that your child is neurodivergent early enough, like truly invest in them becoming them. Really like put the guardrails up for like dangerous stuff, but at the end of the day, if they're into anime or they're into golf or they're into Dungeons and Dragons or they're into whatever, like let them be into the things that they're into. Those will take them places, and they're not normal routes. Like this whole trope of high school, college, job, 401k, it's just not, it's becoming less and less viable for our society in general, but neurodivergent minds, like let the path you take to finding purpose and fulfillment in life, like have fun with it. There's nothing wrong with being obsessed with like manga or anime and somehow that opening up into an opportunity to be an artist or a storyboard writer for something like those areas of interest and passion that naturally they gravitate towards, where most of the time they're well above the bell curve. I mean, even with AI now, like it's the most self-taught, autodidactic population. Like they will find the things, and the things will find them that they just get hyper proficient at, and it's remarkable, and it's very different individual to individual. But like explore, be passionate about the things that they're passionate about, the things that are not whatever socially acceptable, the stimming and the things, and the lack of social awareness and social settings. Like it's not a big deal unless you make a big deal of it, right? Like I've been out many times, and it's been like whatever, kind of like a social faux pas, or an embarrassing moment. But like and the other clients have come to me and it's like, aren't you going to do something? I was like, no, he's just being himself. Like he's not bothering anybody. If someone was bothered, like I would talk to them, but like the other people aren't offended, right? He's just being himself. Like let him just be himself. Like he's great the way he is. He's not hurting anybody. He's not, you know what I mean? There's just this one that I worked with. I can't like obviously say names or anything, but he would get so excited when he was happy that he would like convulse, and he would like stim so hard, and he would have this like really high pitched laugh. And I swear it was like a happiness potion, like just being around it and just being there with him in the moment. Like it literally like made my day better every time he did it. And it's just one of those things, like parents, like these things that, whether it is like obsessive like hand washing, or like stimming, and in kind of situations that it's like, you know what I mean? Like you don't have to apologize for them. They're being themselves, as long as they're not, in danger or in danger to somebody else. Like they're really not doing anything that's harming anyone. They're just divergent. They're just different. And that may be their way of shaking off social anxiety or regulating. And that, just explore it. Don't be scared. Be passionate about them and the things that they're into. And when you need help, like don't ever stop looking, because that's what my folks did. They never stopped looking. They never said, oh, and don't put ceilings either. Use a tape measure. If your son or daughter or whatever, like if they get a diagnosis, like it's not a ceiling, right? They'll still be able to do amazing things. Use a tape measure, find out what they're good at, find out what they need help with, help them build those systems and tools and supports around their thing. Like my memory is shot, dude. I can't even remember where I put my wallet every night. I have to like have a routine to put it in the same place, and I hit it with about 70-80% accuracy, because I set things down and I don't remember, because there's so much going in my head at one time. So yeah, for parents, like really just dive in, have fun, be passionate about their passions, and really don't try to steer them. And if they want to be a violinist and you want them to be a football player, just let them be a violinist. Like let them completely express themselves and be themselves, and really nurture that. And that's what I try to do. And I'm not saying that the people that I work with, that their parents haven't, but I do remember my folks, and I'm not trying to character assassinate or bash them at all, but they really wanted me to do certain things, and I was really into other things. And of course there was some overlap, but I wish, like one of the things is like I wanted to play music, and they never gave me that opportunity. And now, like practicing singing and practicing guitar on my own has been so cathartic, and it was one of those things I just wish I was able to get to when I was a kid. But sorry that I'm super long-winded. I apologize.
No, I love it. I love it. And I agree 100% on all of that, especially with glass ceilings. It's like the social faux pas. The social faux pas are faux pas in some cultures and are acceptable in others. You have to remember it's arbitrary. Like the social rules that make you feel like you need to apologize for your child or your friend or whatever else for doing something that's not harming themselves, not harming anybody else, just might be their way of regulating. I think one of the worst things anybody can do when it comes to socialization and their child is when the child is aware the parent is apologizing on their behalf for things that aren't wrong or bad, particularly stimming. And when a child is aware of that, it internalizes a lot, and it can be very harmful for those reasons. And speaking of glass ceilings, those ceilings that are created are arbitrary, all because they don't fit some sort of standardized mold that may be somehow baked into the culture. But I don't think human beings in general are really supposed to be worker bees. That we're supposed to be able to do great many things. We're the animal that can create art for a reason, and the more we utilize that, the more we live within that ability, the happier we tend to be. And there's a good reason for that. I did want to pick your brain a little bit about, could you speak on the susceptibility of neurodivergence to addiction?
Oh yeah, we're number one. We just are. I mean, statistically, we're the most likely to fall into addiction because for me, I can't even talk about my own experience. Like I remember, kind of the first couple times with, just marijuana and drinking and the quiet that came with it, the whatever that they call the liquid courage, right? And all of a sudden, all that noise in my head just kind of grew quiet, and I was very present in the moment and the bonding effect, and not knowing that in my pursuit of using substances to further socialize and feel connected with my peers, it would turn into a coping mechanism for the instability around my emotions that other things are better at doing. That makes sense. Like there's better ways for me now to handle, the ups and downs or whatever you want to call it, managing, when I'm symptomatic. But I couldn't even see it happen. Like I just did it because it was cool kids did it. All my friends did it. It was like a coming of age thing, house parties and this and that, in the college life and whatever. And I thought I was on the same path of the normal, high school collegiate experience. I didn't think I was doing anything that others weren't. Even when a little bit more, harder stuff came around, I still thought I was like, yeah, plenty of people do this and graduate. It's not that big of a deal. And then not realizing how easily, without me noticing, it turned into a very regulatory coping skill of like I had to be in some way at some time, always intoxicated with something to feel normal. And how slippery that slope really was, and then the fact of continuing to seek out. It's not that anything's a gateway. I don't think I know the gateway theory has been disproven. It was my mind that was the gateway. I was always searching for something that was stronger, that was going to give me a different experience, whether it be spiritual or social or whatever. I was always itching for something that hit harder because it got to a certain point where enough bad things that had happened because of that I was trying to reach for something that was greater for that experience to kind of counteract the negative experiences. And it took me back. I had no like by the time I recognized that I was an addict, I was in treatment at 23. Like, and I was never an IV user. And people ask me, well, what was your drug of choice? And I always respond, well, what do you have? Because that was my drug of choice. Whatever's in your pocket right now is the drug I will choose. Because it was always about never feeling comfortable in my own skin. And that was always the thing that made me feel comfortable because it would shut my brain off, and now I'm at a point in my life, even having to have taken, whatever controlled substances, I've had some injuries in my sobriety. And now I hate that feeling. I almost got paralyzed, reliving my youth on a dirt bike, and having to take pain meds for that. And it was excruciating. It didn't really help that much. And I hated the feeling. And, like, I think it's just so easy because we want to socially connect, and we have very complex emotions. And it's just so easy from a simple socialization activity turning into a way to reconcile past bad experiences, and also kind of, I guess the word I'm looking for is like help buffer present day-to-day experiences. Like we kind of use it almost as like a bubble around us, and we don't really realize it that we're medicating ourselves incorrectly, especially with the amount of things that certain things can do to the neurodivergent brain. We don't understand what we're doing to ourselves. Some of those things can be permanent, especially when you get into like, things like LSD and stuff like that, like, or, methamphetamines, like we don't understand the price we're paying for present day of that buffer between ourselves and our own identity. And it's like, I never thought when I was a kid that I was actually one of the dare kids, like early on. I didn't want to do it. And then lo and behold, from 13 to 23, the list of drugs I haven't done is very short. And so I think you just keep an eye on it. I'm not saying, like, I know some things I know ketamine is a big part of treatment right now. I know they're working on psilocybin as another one, and then MDMAs, and it's, I think, third clinical trial with the FDA right now as a way to help with depression and PTSD and stuff. And I think done with a symptom reduction medical approach, but using things, just have if you're going to use anything that's a controlled substance, like, have that doctor present, because I don't think you're betraying sobriety if you need to take ADHD medication, or if you need to take Klonopin because you have severe anxiety. I don't think those two things are the same, but if you're seeking it for that intoxication, for a consistent buffer between you and reality, and you and your identity, and you and the things you've been through and are currently going through, that slope turns into a slide real quick.
You talked about joy, which is, I think it's important for everybody, but especially true for us. And so for my advice to parents is to let them do what they love to do and not hold to any societal standards, as you mentioned, Shane. Just do more and more of what your child wants to do, and let go of any standards. So having gone through your journey, what are the things that you do today to keep yourself grounded?
Well, first and foremost is service, right? Like, working in a thing that I'm super passionate about, and I get to show up for other people. And even in a personal sense, showing up for others, using my pain as and my past experiences as a way to serve other people has been a huge thing for me, of that, just that purpose piece. And it doesn't have to be, not every neurodivergent needs to go into the mental health field. That's not what I'm saying, but finding purpose in what it is that you do, whether you're, a carpenter or an artist or a writer, or whatever it is, whatever your thing is, really find that purpose, really get that fulfillment out of it. Really feels like the thing that you've been called to do, because with like almost like, I've sat down and thought about how long I had been writing the other day, and it's like almost 25 years. Like, I've been, from a simple little journal or diary, whatever you want to call it, when I was, 8, 10 years old till now, right? Like those things that you just gravitate towards, like, there's something there, and really see where that thread goes. Outside of that, I really believe in, like, some key areas and it's things we teach about, really, like, understanding you as a person, as far as, cardiovascular health is a very important part of mental health, but it doesn't mean everybody. I'm not going to pick on my wife a little bit because she does CrossFit. That doesn't mean everybody needs to do CrossFit. That's just her version of exercise. I can't do it because it makes me puke. I like to lift heavy weights, but I don't like to lift heavy weights and run and do all the other stuff, which is why she's in probably better shape than me. But fine, whatever, pickleball, basketball, hikes, swims, whatever your thing is, to get out, even a walk outside in nature, like, whatever your thing is that gets your heart rate up a little bit, and like that physical aspect, like, have that as a super important part. Here's a funny line from Jim Carrey, where in Ace Ventura, where he says, "Exercise the demons." It's really, the thing is, like, it helps me regulate so much, to kind of, and that hands-on stuff is so good for neurodivergence too, of, like, just doing something with our hands, to really take us out of our head for a minute. Music has been, oh my goodness. I don't know. I don't know if you have enough time for me to talk about music, but music, especially for me, and this is just for me, if any neurodivergents want to try that, instrumental music specifically, music without lyrics, that's not pointing me in any direction. It's just, sometimes I do violin and piano and, like, orchestra. Sometimes I'll do, like, cinematic music. Sometimes I'll do, like, very low key. I think it's called lo-fi is the term, like, instrumental music to kind of sit and almost meditate gather my thoughts, think about my creative ideas, kind of debrief the day. That's to me, I do that every night. I mean, every night, right? Well, it's like my night routine is I'll always put on something before and as I'm going to bed. That sensory for me helps, like, because my brain's just going. It's just going and going and thinking about everything and everything and everything all the time. And just to have something, some stimuli there to kind of organize me and get me to kind of turn off all the different voices that are telling me about all the projects and all the ideas I'm having and all the situations I'm in. Like I'm always talking to all those people at the same time. And that's a big thing. Sleep, like we're really not the best regulated sleep. I mean, I'll be honest, I had a hard time last night. I was so excited for this. And so I think I only got like 3 hours if I'm being honest, but I still like gave it my a good old college try to get some sleep. Like insomnia is a really bad one for us neurodivergents. Like it can happen very easily. And it's just one of those things, keep an eye on it. Even if you have like apnea or if you have insomnia, like your sleep, I think I heard a study said that the average person needs like 6 to 8 hours and we need 8 to 10 just because of how our brains are. And it's not like a bad thing. It's just more of like we need our rest. And so I mean, there's so many things I could get into. I would say like have your outlets, take care of your body, try to eat healthy. It doesn't mean, you have to go hardcore. Just find something that works. Find the things that work for you that are in a healthy direction. Sleep, music, diet, exercise, areas of interest. Like you're going to do the things that are for you way more than you're going to do some very rigid, disciplined idea from somebody else. Like discover it for yourself. Take inspiration from different places. If you like things from the vegan diet, if you like things from the vegetarian diet, you also like, some paleo or keto stuff, like build it yourself. You're always going to do the thing that fits for you way more with way more effort and way more consistency than if something's imposed upon you, right? Like discipline only works as if it's chosen, not if it's forced. And so if you want to live in a healthier direction, like build it yourself, have people there to help you remain accountable, like close friends, therapist, parent, whatever, but design it yourself. There's so many things. There's these good practices that are there for us. They don't work if we don't custom build it. Like make that house. The foundation is, diet, exercise, sleep regimen, those kind of things, relationships, but make it your own. Have the relationships with the people you want. Do the things that you have interest and passion in. Have a sleep schedule that works for you. Shower when you want to. Brush your teeth when it's the time that makes the most sense for you. You have to customize it to yourself or it's never going to work. You're going to feel like you're doing it for somebody else or because of somebody else. But when you design it yourself, that's where you're going to find so much regulation and that joy that you're talking about.
The Japanese have an aesthetic, not philosophy. I just want to state that before I say it. Saying it's a philosophy is akin to getting a tribal tattoo. Don't call it that. But Japanese aesthetic called ikigai. And it more or less means reason for living or something that makes one feel like life is worth living. And that could be anything. It could be multiple things. It could be something as simple as you like going for a walk every day. It could be something as you are really good at making a certain kind of craft and you sell it and do it for a living, or hanging out with your friends and playing games or something like that. If that truly makes life worth living for you, it can be any of those things. And it's important to find that because that cannot be thrust upon you by somebody else. No one can decide what is worth living for you. Only you can. And neurodivergents are more or less often told how they should be versus how they are, and get stuck in that box and get stuck in that square peg round hole sort of analogy, and are never given the opportunity to really step out and find that ikigai, to find their own reason, their own self-being and actualization in that. So thank you for that advice. It has been absolutely wonderful getting the chance to talk to you. I feel like we could talk for a long time about all of this. There's like many tiny things I want to pull out, and I could talk even more about music. So we'll have to have you back on, definitely, probably multiple
I'd love
times.
to.
Yeah, that would be awesome. How can everyone listening connect with you and find your podcast and your writing?
Yeah, so you can just find me on LinkedIn. We're currently in the process of building a studio for the podcast. So I kind of I mock set up just for this. So I got like my light up and everything. But so yeah, on LinkedIn's the best way. Another neurodivergent fun fact, it's really hard for me to do self-promotion. It's really weird. I struggle with like putting myself out there. That's why I use writing a lot because it's like a nice buffer because it's weird to see myself and stuff. But yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best way to find me. It's one I'm most active on. I have some new articles coming out. One is called Know Your Neural Loved One, and then it's about that investigation and knowing the person that you care for or the person that's close to you that is neurodivergent and things that I've learned in my process in serving others. And then the other one is the mismanaged genius, which I've done like a lot of research for. But yeah, LinkedIn is definitely the best way to find me. You can also email me at shane@solagria.com. And if anybody, regardless if you're looking to come to treatment, if you just need somebody to talk to, like I will always 3 a.m., 3 p.m., doesn't matter. Like I will always show up for somebody who's in the midst of a, dysregulative symptomatic moment. And they feel the walls are closing in, like you're not bothering me. This is what I needed when I was going through my go through. And if I can just be a voice to let you know that there's a reason to stick around and that you're worth celebrating, you have things to offer, you have purposes to live for, you have people that will never be the same without you. I don't like The Wonderful Life is a movie I reference a lot of the time. It's an old movie, but he gets to see what his life would be like if he wasn't around. If I can remind you of that, you have inherent value regardless of what acronym is placed on you, and that you should be celebrated for all the wonderful things that you are, regardless of what your whatever non-neurotypical things are. I'm always happy to show up for anybody at any time. So
thank you, Shane. You have no idea how blessed we are to have you. We're truly honored.
I mean, the blessings are all on this side of the camera. And I love the opportunity to meet with people who are passionate about this and help put people like us. This whole experience, it's helping me right now. So it's really great to collaborate and find others that see this for what it is and just want to help people become the best version of themselves without any strings attached. So
awesome. Thank you so much. And anybody who needs to can reach out to Shane and just find that reason for being is all we're asking. So just do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, on behalf of all of us, we will see you next time.